Not 2 o'clock on the dot.
A very good afternoon. Sorry, my audio was muted. I'd like to welcome us all to this edition of the SMC Discourse, holding right here at the School of Media and Communication, Pan-Atlantic University, Lagos, Nigeria. I am Dr. Margaret Agada Mba, and I'm going to be your anchor on this ride. I co-organized this event with Dr. Joshua Osa. We are both of the School of Media and Communication, Pan-Atlantic University, Lagos. Now, for those of us who are joining this for the first time, the SMC Discourse is a monthly virtual series where industry practitioners and academia productively engage more frequently, because we do not really have to wait until conferences and seminars to engage. So we do this with one goal in mind: to identify industry challenges, prefer solutions, and hoping that with this sort of engagement, we can inspire areas of research interest. Basically, these are the reasons why we meet every month on SMC Discourse. And we've been dealing with a couple of interesting issues and trends around the media and communication landscape. And this month, we are looking at strategic communication, a concept that has become more of a buzzword, or even more than that, in the space of media and communication. And a number of persons will ask the question, why communication? What is it exactly that you do in the space of communication? I mean, they can wrap their heads around media, but not communication. They argue that even plants do communicate, and they are right. They're very correct in their own right. But soon enough, you find out why this happens. And I'll just state a couple of reasons. One, the media landscape is changing rapidly owing to technology. The gates have now been broken, whereby everybody has access to medium and can communicate whatever information, and you know what is happening as a result of this. More than ever, organizations are hoping to be more intentional in their use of communication because their audiences are changing. The things that used to be acceptable in the past are no longer. Things are changing at the speed of light. So there's this need to be more equipped in the use of communication, to be strategic in that sense, in the use of communication. And if these two reasons are not enough for you, if you are in Nigeria, you must be familiar with the fact that the National Universities Commission has recently unbundled mass communication as a course in the university. What this means is that we are now soon to be having departments of strategic communication. My university will debut its, come October, we'll be beginning our strategic communications department. So it means that people are going to be starting off their careers as strategic communication specialists. So it has become critical, therefore, for us to begin conversations around strategic communication to identify the career prospects, the trends, the challenges, and how to begin to position ourselves to begin to deal with this if we are not late already on arrival. So this is what we're going to be doing here today in the next 1 hour, 30 minutes or so. And to do justice to this topic, we've decided to bring key experts in the industry, both in Nigeria and in Kenya, to give us insights from that African perspective. And so I'm going to quickly now read to us the bios of our guest speakers or panelists, as they were. They'll be engaging together. And so the first person is a lady we have on our screen that we can all see, I believe. She is no other than Ifesinachi Okoli-Okpagu. She is a transformative marketing leader with multi-sectoral expertise. She was recognized among the top 100 career women in Africa. Ifesinachi serves dual leadership roles as Chief Marketing Officer, Heirs Insurance Group, and Group Head Marketing Communications of the retail portfolios across Heirs Holding Group. Overseeing 7 prominent companies, Ifesinachi has successfully built brands across diverse industries. She actively mentors young women and entrepreneurs through programs such as GapX, Leap Africa, WIMBIZ, and the Tony Elumelu Foundation. She was the best graduating student from the Pan-Atlantic University, where she earned a master's degree in media and communications. She's currently pursuing a doctorate degree at the ISC Paris Business School, focusing her research work on organizational agility. Ladies and gentlemen, Ifesinachi Okoli-Okpagu, our panelist for today. I think we are all in, as you agree with me, for a very rewarding afternoon. I now proceed to, you're welcome to the program, Madam. If you can hear
Good
me.
Afternoon. Yes, I can hear you. Good afternoon, Dr. Margaret.
Thank you. You're welcome. I now proceed to bring to us our next panelist, Dr. Joshua, if you can pop up his image so we can see Mr. Chris Wangalwa. I don't know if I pronounced this name correctly, but I stand to be corrected. I'm from Kenya. I'll just try my best. Okay, so we have Mr. Chris Wangalwa. He is the director for Africa Strategic Communication Hub located in Kenya. Chris is a trailblazing communication strategist, honored as one of the MPRSK's top 30 men in PR 2024 and hosts of PR Safari podcast. Chris is a visionary, pushing boundaries. He's pioneering Africa's first AI-powered newsroom and redefining the field with his theory of experiential communication tech. Chris has advised more than 50 brands and continues to shape industry standards through roles in PRSK and APRA research committees. With a master's in knowledge management and a passion for innovation, Chris lectures at universities and corporations, championing bold, innovative approaches to storytelling and reputation. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Chris Wangalwa. You're welcome to the program, sir. Chris, if you can hear me, please. We'd like to hear your voice.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ifesinachi. Thank you, Chris. Now that we are all on board, we're just going to get started. You may have noticed that we started at exactly 2 o'clock because at Pan-Atlantic University, we do not play with time. Even our students know better. So I'll just begin to further this conversation for which I laid a background during my opening by going straight to you, Chris. Maybe you could give us a heads up here. Now, we need you to kindly unpack the concept of strategic communication, different from other concepts of communication as we know it. I know we have things like development communication, health communication, public relations, and all of that. So what is strategic communication? How is it different from these others? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I will start by just laying a background and saying that we must first understand communication in 2 ways. But before I go to those 2 ways, we must understand strategy, the word strategy. And for me, what I have understood about strategy is that it is winning philosophy. Once we understand that strategy is winning philosophy, we must look at strategy in the context of competition. Once we have understood that we are competing and fighting against others who want to be ahead of us, we begin to ask ourselves, what must we do? Okay? In that context, then, communication comes in. So one, we are talking about an organization that wants to be ahead of others, which then means that they must come up with a philosophy or vision that is better than everyone else. And remember, anyone can come up with a vision. The question is, can they execute? Okay. Once we have understood that, then we go into two types of communication that exist. There is corporate communication and there is non-corporate communication. What Dr. Margaret, you've said, there is animals, there is plants, and there are humans talking, and every time they converse, they are doing communication. So that problem alone has been a challenge to many, many people world over because they struggle to be told that somebody practices communication. I grew up communicating, plants communicate. How can you come and say you are a communication professional? What does that mean? Okay, it doesn't make sense to many people. And that is why then the frustration of some people who came up with the term strategic communication because they wanted to differentiate themselves from those who do what would be mortal communication. If for lack of the better word, mortal. So then I can talk to you and we can say that is communication. I can go and produce a video, that is communication. I can write an op-ed, it's communication. I can do social media video, that is communication. Whatever it is we want to do, it's communication. Then now we begin to talk about, okay, so there's corporate communication. What is this thing? That is when now you begin to realize, there is this model. And in this model that is sender, receiver, channel, message, feedback, the most important thing of all these two things is the sender who is applying the execution or mission. And guess what? The feedback. And this feedback then is what matters of all the things, because once you are applying corporate communication, you are trying to buy over people, stakeholders in this case, and you are trying to make them respond to you. In what way? Number one, there is nonverbal communication and there is verbal communication. And this is a very interesting area as well, because what we have been taught is that verbal communication is gestures and body language, which is okay. However, it is more. It is the action that an organization does. Okay, that is nonverbal communication. You have heard people say 70% of, I don't know where they got that. I tried to learn about it, but 70% of all communication is nonverbal. Okay, it is so important to ask yourself, where does it come from, or what is this nonverbal, or which component of nonverbal this is? It is the action, where in this case we are talking about when we produce, when our organization produces soap. Does that soap or solve my needs without writing, without doing a video, without all those things? Okay, that then is communication, because guess what? People are buying this soap. People are rejecting this soap. People are, whatever it is, whatever the product is. Over and above that, then there is now what I like to call traditional communication, what is conventional communication, what we do every day, where you churn out content, you are analyzing stuff, you're doing media monitoring, you are sort of basically what we do every day that any mere mortal can do. Okay, so then that becomes strategic communication. But the other important thing is, as we do this, communication professionals must remove themselves from corporate communication or from strategic communication and empower the subject matter experts to be the communicators. So in this case, you think about the finance professional doing what they do best, but in the absence of doing what they do, the systems fail. Remember then, the systems are the communication. The finance person doesn't have to talk. Yes, they will talk. The procurement person has to do what they do. Everybody in the department, in their respective departments, have to do what they do for communication to happen. And sometimes you can look at it this way, that communication is in fact leadership, and leadership is communication. I would like to summarize it at that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Communication is indeed leadership. It is the grease that melts everything together, wherever it is, business, organization-wise, however you like to say it, even to the family circles. So it is communication that wills it together, and the need to be strategic in the use of that communication cannot be overemphasized. Thank you so much, Chris. Now, I'd like to go to Ifesinachi. I'd like to know why, which I believe, a sentiment which I believe is shared by a number of persons here and those who are probably not here. Why is strategic communication important for any organization? Business, government, NGOs, every now and then. I mean, go to LinkedIn, everywhere you're seeing calls for employment, job openings, strategic communications. Everybody wants that. Why is it critical? Why has it become important for these organizations to have this strategic communication presence?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, Dr. Margaret. So let's start from this, right? And I'll try to simplify it. Why do companies exist? Maybe we should start from that question, because I mean, most of the time, of course, strategic communications is usually domiciled in companies. So why do companies exist? I think if I were to summarize it, I would say two different reasons or broad reasons. First is profit. We want to ensure that showcase that we're maximizing the income we get, right? So profit. And then the second, which I feel is even more important, is value creation, right? And so imagine that, three of us, myself, you, Chris as well, we are running a company, a wonderful company, startup, and then we run it in a building. And at the end of the day, we have our products, everything is all looking good, and we don't tell anybody. At the end of the day, what happens? Would we meet the goals that we've set, or the reason why the company exists, right? So again, value creation, profits, for us to achieve the main goals of the company, the reason why the company exists, then we definitely need strategic communications, because we are building products for someone, someone out there, and that person is not necessarily in the same building as we are. And we need to ensure that we're getting the information to that person to know that we exist, so that we can then build the relationships that we need to achieve those goals. So I would say that strategic communications is extremely, extremely important for any organization that wants to thrive, that doesn't just want to exist and die. For the sustainability of any organization, strategic communications is extremely important. Now, I would also add a second layer to it. And many times when I look at strategic communications, especially when we are defining goals in any of the companies that we manage, we look at about three different pillars, three main pillars. The first is awareness. So remember the business we started in the beginning. We started this business, we registered it CAC or whatever regulator, right? At that point, there's zero awareness. It's just us in that building that know about the product. But then we start setting goals. We need to get from 0 to 1 to 2 to 100 to 200 and on and on and on. We need to even know where we play in, at what position, from last position, like they usually would say, to what position should we be in the next 1 year. So awareness, right? And that's one of the main reasons why strategic communications exist, to create awareness to now meet the main goal. The second is perception shaping, because at this point, nobody trusts us, right? So second main objective. And then a very important third one is reputation, because guess what? We can use 5 years, worked very hard, to build this business that we started in this building. But in 5 minutes, with poor choices in strategic communications, right? When there are bad decisions that are not managed properly, all that 5-year hard work can come crashing down in no time. We've seen it happen over and over again, right? And so you can see already the reason why strategic communications is very important, because no matter how much hard work you do, no matter how much revenue you declare this year, one little thing, in fact, sometimes it's even the smallest thing ever that can topple, a huge brand. And we've seen huge brands, multi-million-dollar brands, crash because of poor choices or poor decisions or not managing strategic communications properly. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful insights, thought-provoking really, because it really got me thinking, the role of strategic communication in organizations and businesses. We've seen organizations suffer a lot of image issues, out there. And some even go attacking the people, the audiences, without really looking inwards to see how communication had played a role in all of that. Now, while I was listening to you, I was beginning to think, if I were a corporate communications practitioner and given the explanations you provided, I'm beginning to wonder, just maybe as a takeaway for me from here, what's the line between corporate communications and strategic communication? Because it appears very slim to me by your explanation. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a very good question. And for me, I think that they're just two parts of a whole. They're not separate from each other. Corporate communications, I believe, is just, it's almost like a discipline. I would say it's a discipline, especially because obviously, as Chris rightly mentioned, it is limited to companies, right? To companies, so corporate communications. Strategic communications doesn't necessarily need to be tied to companies. It's more holistic. It could be from a personal brand standpoint. You could have strategic communications from a personal brand standpoint. So they are definitely, I would say they work hand in hand, they're together, but one I feel is a part of a whole. One is much larger, and then the second is a smaller discipline.
And I'm thinking that strategic communication is the larger one then, while the corporate comes.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ifesinachi. I would not like to go back to Chris, but while I do that, I'd like to encourage us, if we have contributions, if we have questions to ask, you could use the chat box, just leave them there and we'll come to them at the appropriate time. So Chris, in the course of jumping at communications the way the public has done, because of ease in technology and the platform that is just there, you could just go do whatever you want. We've had a number of issues, things such as corporate misinformation. And people have come to do some rollbacks, trying to launder their images as a result of this, or even misled audiences because of corporate misinformation. So I'm wondering how strategic communication can address issues such as this, corporate misinformation. If you can help with that, please, Chris. Thank you. We can't hear you. It appears you're muted. Chris, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Agada. When I coined the term corporate misinformation, it was a frustration around the term itself, misinformation, and of course, disinformation, malinformation. And it appeared that the outside world was the one talking about, or rather doing all the fake news and what have you against organizations. And nobody really had thought about the fact that it is possible that there is misinformation and disinformation and malinformation happening within the organizations. Okay? And at the rise of that term or that concept, people were a bit resistant until we began to explain that, look, Did you know that, first of all, where you sit, there is a CEO, there is a president, there is a minister who is under pressure to deliver? And sometimes they are under pressure to deliver, but there is nothing to deliver, or the resources are scarce, or there is a leader who just wants to embezzle resources and do whatever it is they like without really delivering anything. If such a person exists, or maybe even there is somebody who is, remember when we began, I talked about winning philosophy and competition. So there is somebody, a CEO or whoever, who is under pressure to win. Once you have that concept, you are motivated sometimes to lie that you are doing so well. Sometimes you will inflate numbers of how many billions you've made this year, which doesn't exist. I have handled, for instance, a bank that for a very long time they were saying they had these billions. And when the CEO died is when we learned it was a shell. Now, think about that and imagine that there was a communication person who was writing the press releases, for instance, and telling everybody how they have these billions and how they have these furniture and facilities, and going all the way to the newsrooms, and the newsrooms also carrying the same. And so the whole world is making decisions based on misinformation. Now, the person who gave the communication professional this information is probably finance, is probably the CEO, is probably anybody you can think of with the organization, okay? The communication person, because this concept is not with them, they have never realized that they can be lied to by their very leaders. So the trust deficit thing now comes up. Once this whole thing say, oh, I have the tendency, cognitive dissonance, I have the tendency to trust my leadership because I cannot get information anywhere else. Okay, so whatever it is they tell me is the cardinal truth. That then is what we mean by corporate misinformation. Of course, there's corporate disinformation because the CEO or the leadership is knowingly lying to this communication person. And this communication person is innocently sharing. The question then is this communication person critical enough to be able to understand that they are being misinformed? And at what point do you detect? And now we introduced another concept when we were creating a course on AI in leadership with one of the CEOs of AMREF. We discovered something called historical data. And how we discovered this is at one point, maybe I think 2021, I was supporting one of the big organizations in Africa, a hospital, and they gave me this task where I ought to diagnose their corporate problems which were affecting their existence. And so I told them, for me to be able to do these things because they are legacy, I've got to understand, number one, I've got to study 10 years of your research reports, annual research reports. And number two, I will go to my systems and I will pull media reports, media mentions for your organization for the last 10 years. And I will study all of those things. At that time, there was no AI. I would have done it in one day. I did it for 3 months. And what happened is that I discovered patterns. Okay. Number one, when they wanted to fire a CEO, it was a plan. You would know when, you would know at what time, what day, and who is going to do this. And so you would see a child has disappeared in the hospital, someone has been raped in the hospital, wrong surgery, all this happening within a week or 2 weeks, and all of a sudden a CEO is fired. When there was going to be strikes, the doctors' strike, it was a plan. You would know when, by who, which month, you would know. And so you begin to realize that even as these things happen, what is the statement being released by this hospital at that time? What is the nature of crisis communication being dealt with by the communication team at that time? And you'd realize that the communication team does not know. They are just conveying sometimes, yes, they have solved the issue, but they have just canvassed. And so it behoves upon us to go back into history, sometimes historical data, sometimes qualitative data, sometimes sentimental data, sometimes even just operating as a thief, if you like, what we call, sometimes you want to do competitive business intelligence and just understand internally what are people saying. And one time, how I got to know that these things actually exist, over and above that, the research that we did was that we sat down with some of the employees who were there for more than 25 years, just befriending them. And when you'd sit with them over a cup of coffee, they'll tell you, Chris, we planned those things for a very long time. So that then is what I would like to just help understand around what corporate misinformation looks like. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I would like to take away from your explanation of corporate misinformation and how strategic communication can be used to address this, to mean that the strategic communication specialist has to dig deeper than just the information being offered them and just being used as a channel. Because I think that if we do this too, it doesn't just speak to our role in those organizations, it speaks to the profession of communication as well, and how people begin to look at practitioners in these areas, people who are diligent and critical, not just people who will just serve as channel to take whatever information, misinformation as it were, and put out there. Okay, thank you, Chris. Right. I'll now go back to Ifesinachi, who never left me to begin with, because I can see her. I can see her here. Ifesinachi, how has communications evolved, over time, and what organizations actually doing to adapt? Because the big question here is, or something that is visible for everyone to know, is that the technological advancements as we have them, the media and communications space seems to be more impacted by these. And so it is no longer business as usual. If you can take us through how communication has evolved over time and how organizations are actually adapting to this change, I think that'll be nice. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the question. So I'll take it in two different parts, and I'll try to simplify it as much as possible, as usual. So the very first is how communications has evolved over time. I'm going to paint a picture that hopefully many of us can relate with. Yeah. So over 20 years ago, if you wanted to watch the news, right, at 9 p.m., is it 10? I think it was 9 p.m., all of us, we are probably going to be tuned in onto NTA, right, to get the news. If we needed to get the newspaper, we knew about maybe 434 that we could get to just get the news straight up, right? And so the first part is that in terms of channels, we were limited. In fact, if you had agencies that organizations were working with, they probably were very few because the channels were not even many anyway. Which made, well, I believe that it would have made things simpler if you compare to today. Today, as against the picture I painted a few minutes ago, the news is everywhere. Before the president has even finished his sentence, someone in the US has got the news. In Australia has got the news. All over the world has got the news. And the news will come in different forms, forms, interpretations. It's not left for you to, make sense of what you see. So I think that communication has definitely evolved. The first part is channels. From too many channels, right, or rather too few channels to too many channels. And that in itself could be an opportunity and a big problem. A problem because if you're an organization, a startup, you're starting now, you are even asking yourself, where do I even start from? Like, what channel? Do I place my ad on Instagram? Do I put this announcement on LinkedIn? Or do I go, traditional as we know it? So that's one. Then the second part, in terms of how it has evolved, is culture, right? Culture has shifted significantly. The things that we could not have allowed back then, now is the normal, is the new norm, right? So culture has shifted significantly. In fact, a third layer to it is that power has shifted significantly. From my point of view, and there was an article that I wrote some time back, I said that there was a rise of executive brands. That's leaders, people, leaders, CEO brand, right? But even now, it's no longer CEO brand. We've even moved to now the rise of anybody. Anybody can become a brand and an influence for an organization. That's why many times, and I personally interview hundreds of people, and you interview people and you're asking, okay, so what are you thinking of in terms of campaigns and just ideas? And the first thing they say is influencer marketing. It's like default, almost everybody, influencer marketing, because they do understand that, individuals now actually are the ones that influence, the way things are, or the way communications move. The fourth part is in terms of the tools. I think that in terms of tools, the tools that we use for communications, definitely tools have evolved. Now we're no longer speaking about websites. As of 10 years ago, it was the in thing, SEO marketing, search engine optimization, ensure that your content is optimized for the web, Now we're not even talking about the web, we're talking about AI. And we're all trying to catch up on, the new norm, right? And it is so interesting what the next few years will bring, because change happens at the speed of light now. So it's an interesting world we are in. We're trying to make sense of it, but at the same time, even organizations have a hard time and matching up with the challenge. So now we'll get to the next question, or the second part of the question you asked, which is how should organizations evolve or match up, adapt to these changes? And I'll start with the culture part because it's so critical. I think it's very important that organizations understand where the audience plays and how to get to where they are, right? I think it's extremely important that organizations, when I say limit, I'll use the word, they should learn how to limit the communications and ensure that it's targeted to the channels that really would give them the most return or the most ROI, right? So that's one, and that in itself is a challenge. But I think that many organizations are really, getting up to speed on that. The second is spreading yourself too thin. Organizations can't afford to do that. There's noise everywhere, really, and the challenge is how to cut through all that noise. But organizations that win are organizations that limit or to restrict their voice to the channels that really would give them that would be the loudest. The third is rigidity. Now, what we've always known is that there's something called corporate talk. We've always known that we have corporate talk, and we almost look professional, act professional, talk professional. But guess what? These days, professional doesn't even help any brand stand out anymore, or not that much. Let me put it that way. We've moved from corporate talk to personalization of brands, and in this case, brands are beginning to take on the human personality or infuse human elements, people into their branding, into the face of the brand, so that at least it's easier to trust. Brands become easier to trust. So I think that more than ever before, personalization is king, right? And so organizations that want to win, that want to evolve, have to kind of balance both worlds between the whole corporate talk and the personalization, so that people, the audience, would look at them and not say, oh yeah, it's coming from the company, please let me not bother opening this email, or let me not even bother looking at this SMS. But they actually look at it and they read it and they're like, oh wow, it's like somebody here is speaking to me. Let me go and let me go and take this action, right? So I think there's that. Then in terms of tools as well, I think it's also very important that organizations also learn to adapt to the new tools that are available, right? And I'll give you a very quick example. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was in a meeting with a couple of my colleagues, a couple of my design colleagues, and we were talking about Canva. It's very interesting. Now, Canva is a tool that we use in strategic communication because it helps us with the design element, right? So just in case there's anyone that doesn't know. And these are designers, and many of them were like, never, Canva can never take my job, never, And I was like, guys, come on now. I mean, now anybody in their house can pretty much sit up and start designing. I think it was over 5 years ago. It was just when Canva was just getting into the mainstream conversations. And they were so dogged that it won't happen. But guess what? What is it now? Every single person can become a designer now. And what does it mean? It means that power shifts, into other, the hands of other people. So it's the same thing today. If organizations do not understand the role that AI, technology plays, and even the evolving technology plays in their ecosystem, then it's very easy for them to miss out. And I believe that time is the most expensive currency we have as an organization. And so we must embrace tools that actually help us maximize that currency, the currency of time. And so if you have tools that can help you cut time, so that instead of sending, drafting emails and everything, you can actually just, with a few prompts, the emails are drafted, you can just add a few things. You can even look at your customer data, ask AI agents to help you segment the data that you have, your customer data by preference, by anything you want, and even create a map in terms of communication. So say, for example, every 1 week, send an email that does this, and that, right? It cuts off time so that it allows the teams then think strategically, right? And in that way, the organization moves much faster, again, because the currency of time is so, so important. And then my final point on this matter would be in terms of, I think I'd mentioned it earlier, but I just want to, emphasize it again, cultural movement. I think the organizations as well should also learn to create movements by themselves. This movement creation is not limited to personal brands. Actually, organizations can champion movements that become culture, that become, that are easily adapted and adopted by audiences. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really totally and thoroughly enjoyed myself with these insights that you just provided. While you were talking, a couple of things came to mind. I tried to break the industries into two. The very traditional or conventional industries that will consider themselves digital migrants, and some of them have shied away from leveraging that space because of all of the gaps that exist, misinformation and their inability. They feel ill-equipped to handle the things that are going on there. So for such organizations, what will you say to them? What will get them up there and then such that they feel safe being in that space? And then for the organizations who are already in the space, two things come out for me for these organizations. One, having multiple channels of communication. Can I get an information from Heirs Insurance and Group and I said, this is coming from Heirs, without having multiple voices from Heirs? Is there a way of unifying communication in organization? Because I believe that constitutes strategy too, such that it is one voice. Then also the humans who work in these organizations, you talked about humanizing and all of that. They bear the identity of these organizations. Are they brought on stage, so that everybody is on one page in their communication of this brand out there? It's not just left to those in the strategic communication or communications unit. So how do we navigate all of this? Because one misinformation from one staff can send everything down the drain. You may want to help, please. Thank you.
Okay, so is this for me?
It's just a follow-up to...
Okay, sure. Okay, so let me start with the first one. I think the first question you asked is for those that perhaps have not adopted the whole digital, the normal in terms of digital, how do they migrate? So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting question. Many years ago, I used to contribute to Punch and, write about, the migration to digital, to digital ecosystem, And it's interesting that over 10 years ago now, if I were to write, the same column, I'll probably be writing about, transitioning to AI. But I think the very first thing is to start simple. Oh my gosh, that is so, so critical. Because it's very easy for organizations to get bogged down by everything. Everybody is saying, oh yeah, this is in, oh yeah, next one, So find out what exactly is the main objective of the company. What is the strategy first? I usually would like to move from strategy backwards into, and move into comms. What is the strategy, of the company? What is its immediate, let's say first or 1 year plan, right? What is the 1 year goal? And then now work backwards to say, okay, how can communications enable this? Then what tools are needed now? Or what must we do now to bring the most return? Now, I think that also there's a concept for that. I can't quite remember. I just flew right out of my head. In terms of opportunity cost, right? You have so many choices, too many, and you now have to choose the one, no more than 3 that will give you the most return. So I would say organizations need to start simple. However, the one most important advice for any company looking to migrate is data, clean data, because everything technology actually rides on data. And if data is not clean, that already is the stage for failure. So any company that is looking to migrate has to first of all ask itself, what data do I have access to? How clean is it? If it is not clean, how do I even get to cleaning my data so that it is even relevant? What kind of policies do I need to put around regularizing my data so that at least I'm not able to, I don't do something that is wrong in that ecosystem. So that's the first question. Then the second is, when there are multiple channels of communications, how do you unify that? And I'll use an example of Heirs Insurance Group as a case study to answer this question. So we actually have, or we run something called an omni-channel strategy, meaning no matter where you are or what channel you go through, the communication is pretty much waiting for you is the same. So whether you go through our AI chatbot or our chatbot rather, or whether you go through. And here's some.
Kindly mute yourself.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so whether you go through a chatbot or you go through, an email or any other channel, the communication is largely the same. Now, the reason is because, and I mentioned it earlier before, the ecosystem, the data infrastructure sits in one place. So all we're doing is just, okay, we need to meet you at the point of need, at the point of your need. We've, in terms of how we deploy services, we call ourselves a simple life company because we want to simplify everything for you, for instance. So if you're at home and you prefer maybe mobile app, then we will meet you at the point of mobile app. If you rather prefer, okay, I want to engage with somebody via email, we'll meet you at that point. So we've kind of done that omni-channel strategy so that everything sits in one place. So that is that answer. And then the final question you asked is employees, how you bring employees on board such or this strategic communications. Okay. Employees are the number one ambassadors, or I would say they are the first level of ambassadors for the brand. And if they themselves don't believe in the brand and are not talking about the brand, that's probably a failure on someone's part. I'm not sure who, but definitely someone's part. So I think that it's very important that even before a press release, for instance, even goes out, those guys inside should know about what's about to happen before it goes out. Because by the time those questions come, they might not necessarily be asking the CEO. They might not necessarily be asking the head of corporate comms, They're going to be asking friends, neighbors, those that work in the organization, and they have to have the answers. So employees definitely play a key role. And it's very important that we also do a lot of internal engagement, stakeholder management, sensitization where it is necessary, so that they also play their role, their part. In fact, interestingly, I'm one of the, a couple of executives who present induction program, right? When new people are joining our group. And one of the things that I would usually, say when I'm presenting is this: everybody seated here, right, is in charge of communications. Everybody in one way or another, mainly informally, because we still know that word of mouth is a very powerful tool for communications, right? And so it's not just one person's responsibilities, actually all our responsibilities. And if we are saying the same thing, the same positive thing, then our brand grows stronger. Then we all enjoy the benefits because the trust index of the brand gets higher, respect level goes out off the roof, out of the chart, and we all benefit from it. So yes, employees are so critical and they have to be part of the strategy.
Thank you so much, Ifesinachi. I think communication is highly underrated. Seriously. try to organize an event, even like this one, and you're just looking at awareness alone, and you see all the things that you have to go through. It is highly underrated. And when we go into the organizations, even the communications, as you've explained it, is evolving over time. And as things are changing, everyone needs to be carried along, so that they are not inadvertently thwarting the efforts of the organization. Thank you. Chris, I'll come back to you, and I didn't forget you. I know I've been away from you for a while now, but I'm back to you, Chris. While reading your bios, I came across the method theory for experiential communication. You are a proponent of that theory of experiential communication, and you're hoping that this will help us better in our understanding of strategic communication and general in the communication space. Now that we're thinking about having departments for strategic communication, I think theories like this will come in handy. Can you just enlighten us a bit on what these experiential theory of experiential communication is about? Thank you.
Thank you. In our country, we have a very interesting and loved president. And one of the things I learned about our president is that he is good at what he says. He can convince you, he can say things and you laugh. And every single day he will out-talk you. He will say sweet things that you want to hear. But for some reason, at some point, there was protests that made him stop doing certain things. For some reason, it appears that the youth and the whole country does not conform to everything he says. Every time he speaks, he opens the mouth, people just say, it's a lie. The question is, why? And that, to me, I sat down and asked myself, okay, maybe this is where now we need to talk about what this thing we talk about saying we communicate and we act. We need to get the difference, okay? So there is the thing I've talked about where it is action and it is while you act, you also talk, okay? A friend of mine talks about listen, inform, act. As you listen from the stakeholders and what they have to say, you must analyze what is being said and proceed to inform your management as what has been said and what is demanded of the stakeholders, and push or follow up with the management or leadership to implement or take action. And go back to the same stakeholders and tell them, people, this is what you said, this is what we have been able to do, and they must see and feel. Very, very important. They must see and feel. That then became the pinnacle of what informed this theory of experiential communication, because it talks about the stakeholder having the ability to experience what the organization is doing. Okay? Once that is the case, then the question becomes, what does that mean? It means that there are 7 dimensions that must be met. Or let me say 6, because then there's the 7th, we'll get to it. There are 6 dimensions plus 1 that must be met. These dimensions begin with the product, where we are saying product experience. And it says, does the product work? As a stakeholder where I am sitting, does the product work for me? Is it useful and innovative? So then once they interact with this product, without you saying anything about writing and pushing it and doing all those things, they must say, wow, we love this product. And that is communication. But the alternative, of course, is they will say, we don't love this product, or why don't you tweak A, B, C, D? Okay, that is then how feedback comes in. The second dimension is service experience, which Ife has talked about very well. Was it easy and empathetic? And in this case, we are talking about touch points. I would like to access everything about your organization while I am seated in my house. I would like to access this very thing when I am in my office. I would like that when I walk into a mall or supermarket, it is the first thing I see. I would like when I go to your website, I do not struggle to access this very information. And when I go to the chatbot and I type in, the answers are there almost immediately. And I would like that when I go to social media, oh, the answers are almost as if you predicted what I wanted. Service experience. And when we leave that, then we go to the third dimension, which is human interaction, which you may have also talked about. And this is, did this organization, did the employees or the staff or the frontline in this organization treat me with dignity? Did they talk to me so well? Did they show me the directions? Did they put me in a position where I feel dignified? It is straightforward, of course. Then we go to the leadership integrity. You have heard me give you the story of our president. Why is it that there were protests? Why is it that there was march to the State House? Why is it that there was invasion of parliament? What is it? Is it a discordance between integrity and implementation of services? So that what you are promising, you are meeting it or not? So there is the ethics and the integrity of the leaders as communication in itself. That you cannot tell us anything, yet you are lying to us. You cannot deliver anything you're saying. And every time you come, guys, employees are saying, we would like you would like you to give us it's been 3 years, we haven't received any promotion. And you say, in the next 3 months, wait and see, everybody will have some form of percentage salary increase or promotion. And it is 3 months and it's 6 months and it's 1 year and nothing. Or there is an employee who just came in. I saw them coming in. They are promoted and have been here working so hard and they are promoted. Leadership integrity as communication. Did the leaders walk their talk? And once we are done with that, that is the fourth dimension, we go into operational alignment. Here we are talking about systems. We are talking about culture vis-a-vis what is being said out there. The communication team is saying good things. When the CEO gets to the platform, they're saying good things. But internally, the systems are not aligned with what is being said out there. Nothing compares with everything that is being said and done. That then raises the question from the stakeholders, do internal systems reflect stated values? And remember, values are culture. Okay, then we go to spectacle. That as we do all these things that we do every day, there is information fatigue. You cannot say you are doing this same thing every day. You must innovate. You must create new things. You must be better than your competitors. You must always yearn and strive to surprise and delight your stakeholders by way of creating new products that are that speak to the things that, in fact, this is what I needed. I didn't know I wanted this thing. Oh yes, I have been looking for this thing every single day. Oh yes, yeah, wow, how did you create this? And that way then you can create buzzes and you can create new things. You don't need to force campaigns. You just have to create new things, new ways and likable things that a stakeholder never experienced before, never asked before, but they needed it. It raises the question from the stakeholder, was there an unexpected moment of care or excellence? And once you are done with these things, remember, at this point, we have not even done your peso, paid and on shared. You have been doing communication without doing conventional communication, without running to mainstream media, without doing share. People are doing it for you. So once you have done all these things, that is when now you do what we're calling crafted messaging or content creation, if you like. And that then sums up the theory. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. This is quite immersive, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of contributions and questions. And when you kept mentioning stakeholders, I like to take stakeholders for the meaning of the word itself. And I like to consider customers and audiences and everybody that engages with that organization to constitute their stakeholders. Okay, thank you so much for this theory, which I believe is going to be quite instrumental for the academics and even for a hands-on really too for those in the industry. Now I'm going to come to you, Ifesinachi. I like to look at how one can measure, because these are some of the things that constitutes the question, what do you guys really do in communication? Strategic communication is seen as a scientific approach to communication, whereby there's a method, you can have outcomes and all of that. So if I'm going to be investing all of this in communication, what is my return on investment? And how do I begin to measure that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I got a coin for every time someone asks, how does this work impact the organization? I probably would be a billionaire by now, because it's like one of the most often asked questions. And it's a tough one. It's tough, but at the same time, there's also the easy part, right? So in terms of ROI, I mean, it's when you look at the sales team, for example, it's so clear cut. Like, did you hit the target or you didn't hit the target? It's either a yes or a no, right? It's so clear. We are raising 1 billion. Did you hit 1 billion? Yes, no. But when it comes to communications, the next question is, okay, we're spending all this money. So what do we expect to see out of it, right? How do you even measure brand equity, which is pretty much, one of the I would say metrics for measuring for communication, communications activities. But I would like to simplify it this way, right? Again, I'd mentioned it earlier, but I'll just bring it back. I'd like to, if I were to simplify it, I would say you can measure ROI in 3 different buckets. The first is awareness. Awareness, because if nobody knows about our product, we're not going to sell. That's it. So that's overarching goal of revenue generation, which keeps the company afloat, right? We need to then, our own work, the way we plug into that goal is to raise awareness, right? Do people know about the brand? Highest level. And then you go to the next part, which is, what do people then know about the brand? And which is where, we now talk about the reputation or even the perception first. Perception, right? Perception shaping. What do they know about the brand? Is what we are saying, what they are getting. Sometimes communication, like they say, is two-way. Sometimes you can be saying something, but what the other person is getting is something different. That's why when we do Chinese whispers, you see it's always very entertaining, because my God, the answer that comes back at the end of the line is usually crazier than when we start. But it's very important that, organizations, what we are saying or what we want to communicate, people are also believing in it, right? And so in that case, our messaging, our perception, our positioning, how we're positioning in the minds of people. Do people think about Heirs Insurance when they think about other insurance companies? Do people think about, when they're looking at partnership, for instance, any company to partner, would they think about Heirs Holdings? So all those questions are the kind of questions that you then ask, because it shows return on investment. It shows that the activities are generating a certain return. But interestingly, obviously, communications, the return on communications is not immediate. And that's where it gets really tricky when you're convincing the board and management that, it's not that we'll start now, immediately we just start seeing things dropping. Yes, sometimes some smaller campaigns could actually, even some bigger campaigns can generate immediate returns, but you enjoy the full benefits over time. And that's the beautiful thing about communications. The third part of it is obviously reputation management. When things happen, when things that are not so positive happen, how are we reacting to this? How are we monitoring? Just ensuring that we keep tracking, what people are saying about us, so that we can catch things very quickly. And how are we spinning turning the tide in case of negative information, right? So that we own it. Now, at the end of the day, I feel that the ultimate goal of every brand is what I personally call icon status. Now, at that icon status, no matter what happens, no matter the bad thing that happens in the organization, guess what happens? You would have already built a team of loyalists. You would have already built your fan base. Your fans are now the ones going to be talking for the brand. And at that point, you're not going to be spending running helter-skelter looking for who to call to manage the situation. It's just your fans that are, managing it for you. And so I think that very important in terms of return on investment, awareness, perception, reputation, and at the end, the very end of the line, icon status. That's how I would measure ROI in communications.
Thank you so much, Ifesinachi. Let me just try to play the devil's advocate here. While for things like reputation management and all of that, I can clearly see ROI. Let's talk about sales. How can you determine that it is communication that is actually driving sale? Just briefly. Thank you.
Sure. And it's a very good one. In fact, very, very good question, because my God, I have these, engagements from time to time. So let's try to break things down. Let me use, FMCG, right? FMCG brands. Let's use Coca-Cola, for instance, right? So, I think they said 4-7 P's of marketing. One of them is distribution, right? And distribution gets the brand all the way to the supermarket in this, down the road, even in the village. Distribution. But when that person goes to the shop to buy in the village, they would usually see many other brands. Why would they choose this one over the many brands? Most likely it's because of that level of trust, right? So in that case, yes, the sales team can actually bring the product directly to you. That's one-on-one engagement. But at the end of the day, there's also a level of trust that the company has to come with for the person to say, yes, let me take your product over the other options that I have. And that's where strategic communications really, that's where it plays a critical role. Elevating or just increasing the level of trust in a way that the audience or just the broader audience accepts you, trusts you, and then puts value for the products that you're bringing to the table. So I think that yes, sales, marketing, communications, we all work together. We're like brothers and sisters from the same family. But I think just like brothers and sisters, we also play different roles depending on the time, right? And depending on the situation. So they all work hand in hand, but there's a very clear difference in terms of the outcome.
Thank you so much, Ifesinachi. Thank you. I mean, that could probably even explain why some generations have the names they call toothpaste, right? Some generations know McLean, some know Close Up. I don't know what the generation today knows. It's thanks to communication, and it goes for detergents too. I mean, my generation is Omo and all of that. It is because the names were consistently out there through communication. Okay, thank you. I'll go now to Chris. Chris, in Nigeria, we have unbundled mass communication, and the tendencies for universities to begin to have departments for strategic communication is very high. My university, for instance, is beginning strategic communication this year in October. So we're going to be having young persons who are coming into the space of communication, hitting the ground running on strategic communication. We're not referring to professionals who are trying to branch in career and offering some certificate. We're referring to people who are taking strategic communication as undergraduate courses, first degree. Families, parents are concerned. What are the prospects? What are the career prospects for our words going into this? Is this something really viable? So, and then what will education and strategic communication look like? Just briefly, these two areas, education in strategic communication and career prospects. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the parents and the learners themselves will definitely be concerned, just like anybody else, even outside communication. And that would be a case of, before I even go into the career paths, what is the age you give yourself to be able to make a living and not necessarily be employed? Remember, in this case, we are talking about two types of employment in communication. You will either be an in-house employee or you will be a consultant. there is nothing else you can do. Once you have understood there are those two, in-house and consultant, even within consultancy, you're probably working as a freelancer, as a consultant freelancer, or you are working as a consultant employee. Okay, so you're an employee within an agency, and so you're providing consultancy services to many other clients or many other organizations, if you like, and individuals, if you like. And then, of course, in-house, you are also in there and you are employed within the communication department, and you are looking at the setup of a communication department. So the setup of a communication department, and Ife will tell you, I think Ife should be helping me answer this question, but yes, it will tell you that there is head of communication, who you do not know where they're coming from. They could be coming from the marketing side of things. They could be coming from videographer. They could be coming from solid all-round communication. They could be coming from photographer. It could be social media manager. It could be, right now we're even talking about web developers as people who are managing communication, because some of us in our organization, one of our departments is coding. So we have coders in my office who are literally doing the work of communication, because they're, guess what? We are creating press release portal, which is an Apple group plus Bloomberg combined. There could be a journalist, all those things. So that is as far as in-house researchers. So you have media monitoring, you have writers, you have, it is very wide. The question is, are you in the right place? And what determines that you, designers, editors, videographers, all those things. The question is, how do you discover that you are in the right place? And I'll give you a quick story of how I ended up discovering, and I don't know, maybe you can judge whether I'm in the right place or not. My background is that I started acting in 1999. When I was, I think, let me not say my age, in 1999. And I was in primary school. And in 1999, I was performing on stage, being directed by very, very experienced stage directors and writers, and in many hands, changing over time, almost every semester or term, if you like. And after that, I went to high school and I continued with that, and we would go into competition, and you're seeing different gifted writers and directors touching you and molding you. And when I left, before I even joined university, I was doing what I was taught. Okay. And I was teaching, directing on stage and film as well, and writing, creative writing. By the time I discovered that there is a course called communication, I knew what I wanted. And I didn't want to lose any of these skill sets, because then I could do all these. Remember, all these things right now as a communication professional, this is what you are likely to do. Number one, you will wake up, you will do media monitoring. You are analyzing what your organization is being talked about, who is saying what time, how many times, in what context, were they positive, were they negative, and you are picking these things and informing the organization on what next step to do. Okay. Number two, you are probably drafting some speech or talking points or opinion editorial or article or press release or newsletter and what have you. And these things that you do them, you are partnering with your colleagues. There is a designer there. There is a videographer, because you wrote a script, you created a script over there. There is an editor who works on the video. There is all these people are within the communication department. Okay. And as you do this, there is you now liaising with the CEO, and in many of the organizations I have advised, I tell them you must set up a studio within your organization, because then you must mold almost everybody to be able to be articulate. And regularly, maybe once a week, 2 times bi-weekly, the CEO comes into that studio and they say a speech extemporaneous, or they look into the teleprompter and they read a speech, and they do all those things. And you do media training that is not programmed the way many of them are programmed, that once a year they are trained. This is very regular and they are very, very adept. Okay, so you can see that it is very fluid. The question is, did you find yourself in the right course, or did you just end up joining? Like, I've met so many before I even joined this. I used to think if I do a communication or public relation course, oh, I'm going to be the spokesperson of the organization. Guess what? It doesn't exist that way. Yes, you can, but it is, think of it as the silent or hidden spokesperson. Because imagine the CEO is reading your speech. You are literally speaking, only that you are not the face. Okay, so you mold, and maybe I've already covered everything. The thing is, at the end of the day, you must discover where you are going to be ahead of everybody that is in your space. And remember, as you do that, you must be very, very good. You might be an introvert, which is one of the things I've discovered. The other day, I discovered my 50-year-old sister is an introvert, and I didn't know. I only discovered in December last year. Okay, so the question then becomes, how do you deal with a communication professional who's an introvert? At the end of the day, they've got to be good at what they do. It doesn't matter, because the other aspect is there are those who are outgoing and very good at networking, which is a very interesting topic as well. What is this networking? Does it mean I have to go and meet people, or do I just need to write some very good content on LinkedIn? And guess what? People will come to my LinkedIn and say, we want to give you this work. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you. I had mentioned to someone in the past that if there was strategic communication at the time I went to the university, probably that's what I would have studied. Okay, because I say this because of how versatile it is. I mean, you're a jack of all trades. You have everything. Then you have this overarching overview of what your organization is doing and point them in a strategic in a direction using strategies. Now, if you look at the job market too, the jobs for strategic communication specialists abound. Like, they are every day being posted out by multinationals. And most of them, trust me, are even remote. So I like to say, for those who are considering the academia, who are thinking about departments for these, you're just in the right place. There's a viable market in that direction. And then for those who will graduate from this, I don't think that with all the explanations that Chris has provided, you'll be lost. Or those that Ifesinachi has provided, there's always going to be something for you to do somewhere. So finally, I'd like to speak with Ifesinachi before we begin to take questions and contributions. Let's look at trends in strategic communication. I mean, given the multifaceted nature of things, one can even get lost. So how do we keep up with trends, and what are the trends driving this? What are we to look out for in strategic communication? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. An interesting one too. So in terms of trends, yeah, I think I would say that the first trend is that in terms of...
you're working from home.
Yes, I'm actually in the home.
Okay, so I can hear, I think I can hear something. Do I go on?
You
What's
mute
up now?
yourself. Sorry, Ifesinachi. Someone, can you please mute yourself? Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I think
Ifesinachi, we can't hear you. I think
Oh,
your
I
microphone.
beg your pardon. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me start with social media, because everybody is very much aware of social media, right? Whether you are there, you're playing there, or you're not, or you just know. So it's interesting because when everyone was on Facebook, we thought, oh my God, there can't be anything, after Facebook. This is the facts. The world has changed, right? And then, they were announcing, oh, 2 billion people now on Facebook, 3 billion and everything. It seemed as if Facebook was the beginning and the end of everything social media. Then came Instagram. And of course, new school, right? Let's go there. Millennials, let's all move there. In fact, leave the next generation back in Facebook. And now, guess what? there's TikTok, right? And the Gen Z guys are like, okay, let's leave the millennials back in Instagram, right? And let's all hear this is where the cool thing, is. And guess what? There will be more. After TikTok, there will be another one, and there's another one. But as communications professionals, I feel that one of the things that we should learn to do is to learn quickly. It's not the time to say, oh yeah, I just want new one. Let's just, let's focus here. Because guess what? Those businesses that said, let's ignore these guys and let's focus, I'm not sure that they are here today. If you remember the story of BlackBerry, let's just, don't worry, they don't have anything to compete against us.
Yeah.
Many of them are not here today. So I think that for communications professionals, immediately a new trend is emerging. Jump on it, learn it. You don't necessarily have to use it, but learn it. Because the moment you see that it's picking up, gaining traction, your audience is moving there, you need to know how to move there. And you do not have the luxury of time at that point. By then, you should now have the strategy of how you want to, own a voice or, run your voice on that platform. So I think that we need to know how to learn quickly and choose wisely on the channels that, would matter the most to our organizations. The second, and I see this happen all the time, collaboration, internal collaboration. I think that in strategic communications, it's very important that organizations don't see it as a department by itself. And I see this happen even at the executive level. Sometimes sometimes CEOs look at strategic communication as a department by itself. Let's take the decision in the room, then pass it to the communications guys to push out. No. Strategic communication should be part of that decision at that point where the decision is being made, because their work is very critical. They need to think of, okay, how will this impact the audience? Okay, how do we prepare for any fallout? Okay, and this and that. So I think that is very, very extremely important. Just ensuring that there's an integration of strategic communications into the organizational infrastructure and even into the decision in the decision-making room. They have to be present. That function has to be present and has to be active, not just even present, but active. Now, the third point I would also, mention in terms of emerging trends is personalization, right? I've mentioned earlier that there was the rise of the CEO brand, and now there's a rise of the individual brand, meaning anybody can be the new influencer. In fact, interestingly, we've noticed that in our organizations, we actually have influencers amongst us, and we use those influencers as our brand ambassadors. Why not? Why go outside to pay when you can actually get people that people organically would be, and as the face of the brand, right? And so I think that organizations have to take advantage of personalization, starting from the inside, what is known, to the outside, what is unknown. Identify those, ambassadors inside, and encourage them, incentivize them to become the face of the brand. That way, you also tap into the new emerging trend of personalization, or the person as the brand, rather than the brand as the entity, right? So I think that that's also an emerging trend that organizations can take advantage of. And then the final point that I would also share is in terms of policy. Now, I know that policy, is such a grand word, probably doesn't quite fit into the whole creativity of strategic communications. But policy frameworks are so important, because now that we have channels all over the place, in terms of communications, is almost everywhere. You see that we're now having to, or the nations, countries are beginning to put policies around things. For instance, so our chairman of our group is a public figure. Now we've noticed that there's also a little rise of deepfakes, right? Deepfakes, that's where somebody clones your image and uses it for something else. And it won't stop here, right? But with policies, if you know your policies, you're able to, use or take advantage of those policies to enhance your business. You're also able to ensure that your company doesn't get into trouble, because it can be a reputation, it can be a huge blow to the reputation if, the organization is called up on one thing. So you have your is it NDPR now? Yeah, you have your NDPR, you have all these other policies coming on. We need to know all of them and put them in force and ensure that we are just working within the confines, of course, creatively, but within the confines of policies. So, and as strategic communications professionals, as companies, we also can be the ones to drive policies. It doesn't necessarily have to come from top down or whatever. it can actually come from us because we're the ones who practice. We know where the, where the shoe pinches. So we can actually be the drivers. So that's it.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you so much, Ife. I'm going to call now for questions. I mean, this is quite huge and insightful. Someone once said the level or the difference between when knowledge changes in the past used to be quite wide, but now 6 months is even too much. You just look that way, and before you return, things have changed drastically. So we need to keep our fingers crossed or keep our hands always on the tap to ensure that as communication persons, we are joining, updating ourselves and moving on with the trend. So this is time now for questions. I don't know if we have so much time. This has been just too immersive. I don't know, and I think also that the panelists have been quite explicit, but I know that some persons may just have contributions and questions to ask. So this is the time for your questions. You could just leave them on the chat box for us, or you can just pop your microphone and use. I'd also like to add that while that is ongoing, can we just power our cameras so that we can all take a group photograph for the report of these events? For those of us who are yet to wear our makeups, I'm sorry I didn't announce where we started. You just need to power your camera now so we can take a photograph while we take the questions alongside. Okay, thank you. So far from the chat box, where we see our commendations for Chris and for Ifesinachi. Your sessions have been thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you so much. Okay.
Dr. Margaret?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll ask a question.
Please, go on. Thank you.
All right. So thank you both for the very insightful answers provided to the questions. My question is particularly for Chris. So you talked about the meta theory of experiential communication. Is it mandatory that all of the 6 stages are applied to every strategic communication design? So for instance, you talked about I know in one of the stages, you talked about the need to produce new products or come up with something new. Is this mandatory for everyone? So for instance, people who have been in, say, PMS business, premium motor spirit, that's something people need all the time, and that's their business. Are you going to also recommend that they come up with something new at some point?
Chris, please.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question, first of all, because at the point of designing this theory, it was informed by my master's, which is knowledge management and innovation. And one of the things that we were taught in that master's class was competitive advantage and the importance of that. It means then that you have to be a little bit paranoid and imagine that there's always somebody who's going to kick you out if you sleep a little. So the question then is, where you sit and you produce this product that cannot be tweaked, are you able to survive as others create the same? Or will your market base shrink? Because if everybody is producing the same, the only thing you are relying on is the fact that you have been around. Now, if you have been around and somebody comes and outmuscles you with your brand, it means you are extinct. I'd like to give you a very interesting theory by Clay Christensen. It is the theory of disruptive innovation, or innovator's dilemma. And it says, while this product that you rely on is the cash cow exists, it is important that you create other things that one day will come unseen. Nobody really gives a hoot about it, but it is very important in the existence of humanity that as life goes on, it will one day topple what is big. Think about IBM and the supercomputers. Think about Nikon and Nokia, if you like. So that other people came and they did what they did in more innovative ways that surprised people, to the extent that this person who believed in their brand so much that they didn't have to change had to be phased out. So the question is, this very product that you describe, is it really true that it is the one and only and nothing else can happen to it? Or is it a case of let's wait and see? So then it is very important that such a product sits down and looks at its data and asks itself questions as to whether it will continue to exist, or it has to use its feedback to create or to inform new ways of doing things, which we call new knowledge. And that new knowledge is what helps to innovate.
Thank you so much,
in itself
Chris.
is communication. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. I think that additionally, you can add value to what it is that you do, because if there are 10 fueling stations selling PMS, what is it that drives people to your own station? Even if your product meets the same need, some value addition can come in handy. Thank you. Because we've actually run out of time. In the absence of any other question, not many people have turned in their cameras, and
Please,
we
may I
really do need to
request?
take these pictures. Yes, please.
Okay, please,
So
may I
kindly
request that
request.
I have
everyone
a
do that
question.
switch?
Okay.
I have
Dr.
a
Gina.
question in the chat box.
Oh, really? Let's see.
Sorry to
Okay.
jump in.
Yes, it says impact statements are usually communicated by organizations, sometimes accurately and at other times exaggeratedly. How should the public measure the impact, for example, GT Autism Initiative, beyond all things they say or communicate to us and beyond? Okay, I think we are touched around this when Chris was trying to talk about the theory. But Dr. Gina, who is your question directed at?
Ifesinachi.
Okay, thank you.
She mentioned,
Ifesinachi,
yeah, she started
please.
that conversation. So if she doesn't mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please,
Okay,
I
thank
also
you
have
for
a question after this, please. When she's done, I also have a question,
Hello?
please.
Hello, I also have a question
Okay.
too.
Okay, thank
On the
you.
chat box.
On the
Okay.
chat box. So, yeah, we'll take
Right.
them all day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Impact statements. So it's an interesting one, but I think that for impact statements, they're usually tied to objectives, to a particular objective in the company. And so in terms of effectiveness, it's most likely going to be the objective that would be measured than the impact statement itself. Now, I'm not sure what the GT's Autism Initiative, the impact statement is, except it's beyond, no, I'm not sure what it is, but I think that it usually lends or I would say it's derived from the objectives of the organization. And so in that case, what can then be measured is, first of all, are people aware of this impact statement? Do they understand what it means? And do they buy into what it means or what it's trying to convey? And in that case, then it definitely would impact on the organization's goals. Now, in the case of the Autism Initiative, it's a not-for-profit, I believe. And so in this case, the main objective would definitely not be anything like profit. It would be value creation in one way or another. And so if people buy into what it's being said, if people trust the brand enough, then it means an impact statement is definitely, effective. I hope I've been able to answer the question.
Yes,
Dr.
thank you.
Gina.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think experiential communication too will add to that. When people engage with this program initiative, what do they take away from it? That can impact the whole thing that the program is saying more than, it's big, as Chris explained. That engagement with the stuff, the program as it is, as against the communication of it, is there a sync in that? Okay. So another question here says, Is this for everyone or just the panelists? I don't know what that means.
I think the person was
Anyone
asking
can.
about the cameras, you know.
Yeah, the camera is
They-
for everyone, please. Everyone needs to turn on their camera so we can take
Okay,
a
my
picture.
question is related to Ifesinachi, please,
Okay.
on the chat box.
I didn't see that. Probably you could just say it because I can't. Okay. Can small organizations, is that yours?
Yes, yes.
Can small organizations implement strategic communication without large budgets? Budget is a thing, yeah. Yeah. If it's not cheap, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the question. I don't think that, in fact, my own philosophy is that the more limited your budget is, the more creative you are. Really, that's my own personal philosophy. And so I feel that no matter whether you're a small business, medium size, large business, you can actually achieve the outcome of communications if deployed well creatively. In fact, the main questions or the main thing that you're supposed to watch out for is whether you're answering the questions correctly. What am I trying to say? Who am I trying to say it to? And when am I saying it? So I think that small organizations, big organizations, the principles are largely the same, irrespective of the budget. It's just how you creatively manage the budget to choose wisely the channels and, of course, the messaging. Thank you.
you. Yes, I hope your question has been answered.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes,
Just
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
so
please.
my question is also to Ifesinachi. I just want her to just trace a little on the difference between strategic communication and integrated marketing strategies. Are they the same? Are they similar? Where are they, parts? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the difference between strategic communications and integrated marketing communication strategy, right? Just to clarify.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So integrated marketing communication strategy is really broad, and it's like different puzzles fitting together to make a whole. So earlier we had said the difference between corporate communications and strategic communications, and we said that corporate communications is really restricted to organizations, but strategic communications is beyond the organization. It can be at the national level, it can be at any level, so it's kind of broader. So if you then go to internal market or integrated marketing communications, you're talking about so many disciplines, including advertising, PR, product marketing. There are so many disciplines inside it. And it's such a huge, large ecosystem that oftentimes people actually just, mistake it for one discipline, but it's a complex ecosystem that kind of links or intertwines together. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Okay, Choma, thank you. I'm just going to lend my voice to the person who asked about budget. If I remember vividly how Chris walked through the theory, before he even got to creating messages and all of that, it was a long way down the list. It means that there are a number of things that you can do as an organization in strategic communication without even requiring a budget, because it is in the everyday how you carry out your activities. It is in the efficacy of the products you're trying to sell. All of these are all communication. You're communicating with these things before you actually get to the point of message drafting and using channels and all of that. So anybody can practically begin strategic communication. Thank you.
Thank you
Is there
very
any
much.
other question for us? Yes, please. Where is the place for strategic communication in a production outfit? Ifesinachi. Now, let me apologize to my panelists. You gave us so much, so do not blame us if we have questions and contributions for you, okay? Thank you.
Okay, so strategic communications usually ties to, in a production outfit. So a production outfit is a company as well. And so strategic communications will be very, very important, especially if you have a community that you serve or audience, a large audience that you want to ensure that you're carrying them along. So it has its own place in a production outfit. In fact, it has its place in any organization at all. I'm struggling to think of any organization that wouldn't need strategic communications. I'm struggling. Maybe as we go through the meeting, maybe we can think of one. But there's definitely a place there. Secondly, when you say production, I want to assume that it's media production because usually that's the default. But I know that production can actually be any. It can actually be manufacturing. But for the sake of this question, let me assume that it's media production. So in a media production organization, you have an audience, you have people that you want to ensure that they know about you and the like. And so, yes, it's very important that you're also communicating what you do, how you do it, how you're different from everybody else, and the value that you bring above everyone else, and that they understand you in such a way that they trust and are then willing to partner with you. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry, Dr. Margaret, I just have a request, right? So I think that this discussion is quite insightful. So I'm just asking, there's so much that they have actually, pointed out. Is it possible to have a second edition of this conversation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Popular demand, eh? Okay, I am going to speak with the panelists and see how much they can stretch themselves in the future. But definitely, I'm believing that. I mean, Ifesinachi is an alumni of the school, and then Chris has become a friend of our school. So they may just be willing to oblige us. But then this recording, the recording for this conversation is going to be available and shared to participants at this event. It's even going to be on YouTube, so anyone can access that. But in future, we may just bring in something to expand on this. But in the next month and subsequent months, we already have areas lined up in communication that we're addressing. And we're hoping that you can come on board, Choma. Thank you. Chris, you
Thank
had
you
your
so
hand
much.
raised.
Very briefly, please,
Okay.
can I say something?
Go on, please.
Can I go on? All right,
Yes,
thank you.
please.
Thank you so much. This is my first time of attending this session, and I'm very glad it was well detailed with a lot of professional analysis coming from different angles and shedding light
Thank you.
in a lot of perspective of communication. There's something going on around some industry, within our industry, communication media. A lot of people are trying to come into the industry, specifically playing the role of a PR where we have strategic communicators. But sadly, a lot of them are not ready to be schooled in the process of the industry. And a lot of us in the industry always vehemently go against this. People see us as we trying to be overboard because we want to protect our professional callings and order. How do you mitigate such when you are in an organization? Maybe you employ some persons to manage for you. They want to do it, but when you get somebody more fit in, they start having this unease. So when you have such situation, how do you manage such experience? Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Osheni, who do you want to answer your question? Who is your question directed
Anybody,
at?
maybe specifically the other man, the Kenyan man specifically?
Okay,
He
Chris.
has touched something around that.
Okay.
I know you had your hand.
Thank you.
You can seize the opportunity to, yes.
So if I understood your question, you are talking about the invaders into our industry.
Precisely.
Yes,
Perfectly worded.
and just so I can put words into your mouth, largely you are talking about either somebody who comes from quote unquote engineering and they are practicing communication.
Exactly. It's even happening in the media industry.
Yes, or somebody is lifted by a politician from the newsroom and they are put in a certain big, role, say head of communication or spokesperson of what, I don't know what. And it is happening. And one of the things we asked ourselves, why is this the case? Remember when we began this conversation, we talked about, number one, the lack of understanding of what communication really is. Okay? It means then that there's somebody who happens to be a leader, somebody who sits in a decision-making table or sit in a position of influence where they can, even human resource. And the only thing they know about communication is the fact that in their relationship with their spouses and their children and their relatives and friends, they tell themselves, please communicate more. What does that mean? It tells them that when you are going to run late to the house, please send me a message or call me in good time so I don't cook extra food. And you're not going to eat. You have communicated. So that is their concept of communication, which is why I started to make an argument that even trees communicate, and even animals communicate, and even humans communicate. And so some people, when they sat down and they got frustrated, they began to coin a terminology called strategic communication, so that they separate themselves from these mortals. But as they came up with this phrasing, they did not necessarily change. The only difference was that they had gone to school, to a school of communication. So they are doing almost the same thing that this person who did not go to school do, but calling themselves a different terminology, separated by the fact that they went to school. And then others now began to, so that is when you begin to realize, oh, I sat down, we were having this chat with one of the professors in Kenya, and he introduced a very interesting topic. He said, there is nothing like strategic communication. There is nothing like development communication. There is nothing like corporate communication. There is nothing like health communication, because then you will begin to say there is not something like engineering communication, infrastructure communication, education communication. So then they said there is only communication. It is a matter of, is it quality communication or average communication? Okay, once you begin to realize that, you ask yourself, but why is it that these very leaders that make decisions still do not understand? And they still go ahead to employ an engineer and a HR person and whatever. And we, it is because, number one, the fact that we said, but for the case of the journalist, we must appreciate that they remain communication professionals, but they need to adapt. They need to go back to school and understand what communication is. But over and above that, the journalist keeps getting these jobs because they have an age of publicity. Because the community, remember, we have started to understand what Bernays said, psychology. Why, when you sit in the shoe of the leader, they see the journalist as the ultimate communication person, because they give them the old communication, which was press agentry. Okay, that to them is communication. There is no other communication. Oh, you want to sit with them and trade them. That to them is not communication. That is, you're wasting their time. Okay. And now, therefore, the communication person must look back and ask, the professional now, must look back and ask themselves, do I need to think like a journalist? So that then I also have a face where the president can call me and give a talk to the cabinet, because I am a popular communication professional. And so you separate yourself from the normal journalist to you, who is a communication professional, who is more or less an influencer or a popular figure. That then begins to put communication people into a place where, oh, you cannot just mess around with a communication professional. Even better, you must come up with a policy. You must come up with an act that identifies you so that it blocks anybody who is not professional. Those become the solutions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Wisdom has a hand. Can you just leave your message in the chat box, please? And Dr. Joshua, have you taken the photograph yet?
I have taken it, but all the cameras were not switched on.
Please, we need to have a rich photo collection, please. Our gallery has to be rich. Thank you. If your camera isn't turned on, please, I'm begging, kindly turn your cameras on so we can have this photograph, okay? Thank you. I don't know how we are doing, Josh, how are we? Okay. I'm expecting a question in the chat box. Wisdom, is your question here for me yet? Okay.
Good night. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Wisdom. I don't want us to leave without hearing from you. Wisdom, are you there? Okay. While waiting for Wisdom, permit me to thank you on behalf of the SMC Discourse team, Ifesinachi. Thank you, Chris, for your time. I know you invested a lot from what you have given. You gave it your best, and we are enriched and grateful for your time invested. You business persons taking this time to be here imparting us, it is huge. Thank you. We do appreciate this. And we're hoping that this will inspire a lot of changes in our businesses and even inspire research as intended. And we do hope that when we come calling, you keep your doors open for us. Thank you, Ifesinachi. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
We are going to reach out to you after now with our formal gratitude. But for now, on behalf of everyone who has participated, I say thank you. Next week, next month, when we come back for another edition of this program, we're going to be looking at an area in communication. Remember, communication is so broad. There's this UX. Dr. Josh, help me out there.
All right. Career prospects in UI UX design. Career prospects in UI UX design.
Beautiful area. A wonderful area.
It is something I am unfamiliar with, but it's something I'm very willing to learn because, as Ifesinachi mentioned, these things keep coming up. And if we want to call ourselves professionals, we need to at least be aware of these things. So join us next month. The mail will be communicated, your invitations will be sent, and then spread the word. Let more communications people begin to engage, because now more than ever, as one of our panelists, our guest mentioned, participants, a lot of people are coming into this space. Everybody, go to the digital space. Everybody is creating content. They are communicating. I mean, they are replacing, they are threatening the space of communication. How can we equip ourselves, strategize ourselves, take that picture, the bigger look, and take our pride of place in the space of communication. Now the market is open. We need to equip ourselves to have the edge over all that is happening there. So thank you for your time. Our program again in strategic communication begins in October in Pan Atlantic University. You may want to use the website to find out more about that for yourself. This conversation does not end here. It continues. You can leave your messages on YouTube where we'll post this video. Leave your comments and all of that. Come to LinkedIn. The conversations are ongoing. Okay. Thank you for your time. Once again, I am Dr. Margaret Agada Mba, and together with Dr. Joshua, who has been working behind the scene, we are organizers of the SMC Discourse. It is a monthly virtual series, so have your calendars marked, and thanks for your time. In the absence of no questions or no comments, I'd like to say goodbye to everyone, and thanks for being here. Thank you, Ify. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Margaret, and thank you,
Chioma.
Dr.
Thank
Josh.
you, Dr. Gina.
Thank you to the
you.
panelists.
Thank you.
Well
everyone.
done,
Ms.
Dr. Margaret. You did a
Ifesinachi and
fantastic job.
Mr. Chris.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Well done, Chris.
Goodbye now. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
All right. Goodbye.